Good morning. My name is Tom. I come to you from the Rustic log cabin at Deer Camp in northern Maine. Right, I've been working on a couple of videos now on old man's beard, a myth about the old man's beard. These are 4 items that are out in the wilderness, there for the taking, free. In the winter time, these are items that you can find. This is cedar bark, and this is old man's beard, and this is an ash tree, dry leaves. These white birch bark, this cedar, and that ash is probably the best tinder that you are going to find out in the bush in the winter time. So this goes along with that last video that I just put out. I'll put a link to it here in this one so that you can watch the whole thing on this old man's beard and why that I believe it is a myth. This stuff is bone dry today. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to build a fire out of each one of these, and we'll see how that goes. I feel that this right here is the best if you use it with a Bic lighter or a flint and steel lighter, and these two here would be perfect for a ferro rod. This is so dry today that it might take a ferro rod. I'm going to find out. Most of the time, old man's beard is way too wet to use. It has been extremely dry here this summer. And the reason why it's way too wet, it hangs in a tree like this, and all it is a sponge for humidity, moisture, small rain. But I want to see here today. I'll give it a fair shot. But I would make this like the last resort materials for fire building, just because of its most of the time way too wet for any kind of a serious fire starter. But you take it in, what you do to make it dry, you put it in a cotton handkerchief and put it in your shirt, underneath your shirt, against your t-shirt, and then your body heat will suck the moisture out of it. So, but like I said, this right here is really dry today. So like anything, try to crumble it up, make it as good as you can. And let's just see if it will take a ferro rod. Personally, I think it's best with a Bic lighter or a flint and steel lighter, which you should carry with you anyways. But if you're out in the bush and this is what you could come across, let's just see. Just got to clean up my rod. Couple good strikes on that will give you a lot better spark. So I like to say, if you can't get a fire built with at least, let's give it 3 strikes. Outside of 3 strikes, then it's not a good material. It's gonna go, but like I said, it's been bone dry. But see, it's bone dry, and even being bone dry, now granted it took off in 2, but that's bone dry. And normally that stuff would not be bone dry ever in a million years. But like with anything with YouTube, of course it will work good today. But like I said, we've been in a drought here in the state of Maine for several months. We have got rain this fall, but on most circumstances, and I think really the reason that this really took off was this moss that was with it. Because see in here, see how the green grass, it's almost acting like it's a fire retardant. The green moss that's in there, see that? That's almost acting like it's insulation that you would get out of a house that just won't burn. So I think really the reason that this went today was because of this dry moss that was mixed in with it. So that's just a little, And on the same limb, you've got yourself a pine cone. That's another great fire source. So we'll move on to the next one. So that was the moss. And here is the dry leaves. But everybody knows how this one will go. And in the wintertime, these dry leaves, they only take an hour or so of wind and they'll be dry enough. Now with leaves make a good tinder, but they burn fast. They're a little bit tough to get with a ferro rod. It can be done, but it's a little bit tough. So what I do is you grab a good bundle of leaves. That makes kind of like your first, your tinder for your first fire there. And then I think, use a lighter. There's nothing wrong with using a lighter. Because with leaves, it takes, for one thing, you can get a pile of leaves way too tight in a bird's nest. And then you can start putting small twigs on here, small sticks. But it's a little bit easier to light leaves with a Bic lighter or with a regular flint and steel lighter. You can do it with a ferro rod, but in the wintertime, it's best to use what works the fastest. Now the cedar bark. Like I said earlier, cedar bark is just like birch bark. Right, full of oils. And all you do is just scrape it. And you end up with these fine, fine shavings. And you end up with the bark that's still left over. Which is full of oil. And then what you can do is you can break this bark up into little pieces. So that when you get this other pile here going, you can drop this bark right on top. Here's your cedar, and the same thing here. This cedar bark is quite coarse, and if you were out in the bush and you really needed a fire, this would be perfect. But always carry a flint and steel lighter or a Bic lighter, because if you're cold and you need a fire right now, you don't want to be playing around with some of these other things that are fun to do around a campfire and practice your craft and all of that. But in a serious situation, flick your Bic. And this pile of cedar right here, you don't need to get it super fine and perfect to use as your tinder to get your fire built. Now we had rain 2 nights ago. So this stuff is just a little bit damp. So with your lighter, wind wants to blow my little fire out. like with anything, you just got to be a little patient. Well, there you go. 3 different methods for building a fire. If you was in trouble, lost in the woods, or whatever. Make sure keep a good flint and steel lighter with you, and a Bic lighter. All the other stuff is for fun. I enjoy it. I'm not knocking it. But as far as a survival fire goes, stick to the stuff that is the easiest to do, because you absolutely need a fire. Throw me a bone if you enjoyed this video. Subscribe to the channel. Hit the like button. Tell others about my channel. I really believe that I have a lot to offer. I hope you enjoyed the video today, and I will see you in the next one.